There are 6 used cars in this country that fail roadworthy inspections more than just about anything else on the road, and most blokes buy them with no idea what they're walking into. Here's the part that catches people out. A car can drive beautifully. Smooth, quiet, pulls like a train, feels mint. And it can still fail a roadworthy inspection stone cold dead. Because a roadworthy isn't about how the thing feels behind the wheel. It's about strict rules, and the inspector is trained to hunt for the boring little faults you'd never even notice. That's the trap. There's a thin line between a car that feels okay and a car that's actually legally okay, and the moment you end up on the wrong side of that line, it can cost you thousands. We're talking a car you've already paid for, sitting in the driveway, that you can't sell, can't re-register, can't legally drive. So today, I'm giving you the 6 used cars that keep failing, and the 6 exact faults that sink them, so you check before you hand over a single dollar. And 2 of these are cars that half the country buys without a second thought. I'm Bo, I'm 53, I've run my own workshop longer than I care to admit, and I've got nothing to sell you. Let's get into it. Fault number 6. Lights. Indicators and electrical gremlins. The cheap fail nobody sees coming. We start gentle, with the one that should be the easiest to avoid and somehow trips up the most people. Lights. One single blown bulb will fail you. A headlight, a brake light, an indicator, a reverse light, even a little reflector. That's an automatic knockback. And it doesn't stop there, because cracked or faded headlight lenses, moisture sitting inside the housing, or headlights that won't flick from high beam to low beam, all get rejected too. Then you've got the electrical side of it, where a dashboard warning light that stays on, an indicator flashing too fast, or a horn that's gone quiet, all count as failed safety items. The irony of it is, these are the cheapest fixes on the whole car, but they're the single most common reason a perfectly good vehicle gets turned away. The car I'd point out here is the used Holden Commodore. Lovely thing, plenty of life left in them, but they're getting on now, the electrics are aging. And Holden's an orphan brand these days with a shrinking parts network, so a dash warning or a lighting fault that should be a 5-minute job can turn into a wait. It's number 6, because it's the most preventable fail of the lot, and yet nobody checks. Fault number 5, worn tyres and mismatched rubber. Next one down, and it's tyres. Now everyone reckons they know their tyres, but here's the rule the inspector actually goes by. The law wants a minimum tread depth of 1.5 millimeters right across the whole tread surface, and anything under that is an instant fail. But it's not just bald tyres. Bald spots, bulges, cracks, or splits in the sidewall will all fail you, and in most states your spare has to be roadworthy too, which catches a lot of people. And here's the bit that matters most, because if the tread's wearing unevenly or feathered, that's a red flag pointing at an alignment or suspension problem hiding underneath. Mismatched tyres across an axle can fail you as well. The car I see this on a lot is the used Nissan Navara. Properly popular ute, plenty of fans. But the rear leaf spring setup on certain models is known to sag and droop, and a saggy rear end chews the tyres unevenly. So you've got a tyre fail that's really pointing straight back to a suspension fail. The trap with tyres is they look fine to the eye. It's only when you put a tread gauge on them that the real story comes out. Fault number 4. Brakes and the handbrake nobody tests. Now we get to the serious end. Brakes are one of the most heavily scrutinized things in the entire inspection, and rightly so. Worn pads, scored or warped discs, leaking brake fluid, a spongy pedal, or braking that pulls to one side, all of it fails. And the one people forget is the handbrake. The inspector will check it hard, and if it won't hold the car on a slope, that's an immediate automatic fail, no argument. There's also old contaminated brake fluid, which quietly kills your stopping power and gets flagged the moment it's tested. The example here is the used Holden Colorado. These built a reputation through the diesel years for wear and for owners who let things slide, and a high-kilometre Colorado bought cheap off the used market very often turns up with brakes long overdue for attention. Then you've got the orphan brand parts weight on top. Here's why this one matters. Brake parts are mid-range money, not the end of the world. But a failed brake item is non-negotiable. The inspector physically cannot pass it, so you're fixing it whether you like it or not. Quick one before we push on. If a 53-year-old bloke with grease under his nails is saving you from a dud purchase, do me a favour and tap that like button. Costs you nothing, and it pushes this in front of more people about to get stung. Cheers for that. Right, the top 3 are where the real money lives. Fault number 3, suspension and steering wear. Suspension is the one most drivers never think about until something's knocking loudly, but an inspector picks it up long before you'd ever hear it. We're talking leaking shock absorbers, worn bushes, sagging springs, play in the steering rack, loose tie rod ends, and a power steering system that's weeping fluid. Any of those will fail you. And the telltale signs are there if you know what to feel for, because the car bounces over speed humps, it drifts a bit in the corners, or it just feels loose and floaty. The nasty part is that worn suspension also wrecks your tyres and lengthens your stopping distance. So one suspension fault very often drags a second fail along with it. The car I'd flag here is the older, used Mitsubishi Triton. Now I'll be fair, the newer ones lifted the game, but the older Tritons earned a name for tired drivetrains and worn underpinnings, and a high-kilometre one is a genuine lottery on bushes, shocks and steering wear. The lesson with suspension is that it's almost never obvious from the driver's seat, and that's exactly why used buyers get blindsided when they get to inspection. Fault number 2, rust and structural corrosion, the one you can't patch. This is where it stops being a wallet problem and starts being a write-off problem. Rust, now, a bit of surface rust, might be acceptable. But corrosion in the load-bearing parts, the chassis rails, the pillars, the sills, the suspension mounting points, that's an immediate, non-negotiable rejection. Same with unrepaired accident damage to the structure. And here's why it's so brutal. This isn't a part you swap out. It's structural welding, proper work, and on a lot of cheap used cars, the repair simply isn't worth what the car's worth. The car's done. The example I'll give you is the used LDV T60. There have been corrosion concerns serious enough that the brand has been publicly challenged over rust on utes that were sold as tough and durable. A ute that's rusting from underneath you is a structural fail just waiting to happen. It sits at number 2 because it can total a cheap car on the spot, and a fresh coat of paint or a layer of underbody grime can hide it completely from an untrained buyer. So the move here is simple. Get any car you're serious about up on a hoist and have a proper look underneath before you pay a cent. Fault number 1. Fluid leaks, exhaust and emissions. The hidden killer. And topping the list, the faults you almost never see coming, because they're hiding where you can't look. Leaks and exhaust. Excessive oil, fuel or coolant leaks are all grounds for failure, and the most common are oil leaks from the valve covers, the crankshaft and camshaft seals, the timing covers and the sump. Then there's the exhaust, where a leak, an excessively noisy system, or visible smoke fails you on both safety and emissions, because a leaking exhaust can push fumes straight into the cabin where you're sitting. The car I'll put here is the used Volkswagen, your Golfs and Polos and the like. VW's got a history of oil leaks. And then you stack on the dry clutch DSG gearbox that can surge or respond inconsistently, and now the inspector's got 2 ways to fail it. Because an inspector can absolutely fail a car for a transmission that surges or responds unevenly, and a used DSG box that's overdue for service is a real risk. It's number 1, because these faults are often completely invisible until the car's up on the hoist, and on a European used car, the repair bill can dwarf what you paid for the thing. A quick test drive will never show you any of it. So why do used cars fail like this? Here's the honest answer, and it runs through every single one of these. It's almost never some complex mechanical disaster. It's neglect. Skipped servicing, ignored warning lights, and a lifetime of she'll-be-right maintenance is what turns a sound car into a fail. And cheap used cars are very often cheap precisely because the last owner deferred everything, and now you've inherited the bill. Then the orphan brands like Holden and the thin network brands like LDV and some of the Europeans make every failed item slower and dearer to put right. The point I keep coming back to is this. A car that drives fine can still rack up multiple fails, because feeling okay and being legally okay are 2 completely different things. So how do you protect yourself before you buy? Right, here's your plan. Never buy a used car on looks or a test drive alone. Book an independent pre-purchase inspection, separate from whatever certificate the seller's waving at you. Get it up on a hoist and look underneath for rust, leaks and suspension wear, all the stuff you simply cannot see from the driver's seat. Then do the 5-minute checks yourself. Walk round and test every light and indicator. Put a tread gauge on the tyres. Pull the handbrake on a slope and see if it holds. Check the windscreen for any crack in the driver's line of sight. And factor the cost of the likely fails into your offer. Because a car that needs tyres, brakes and a leak sorted is not the bargain the sticker price says it is. If it's a DSG or a CVT car, get the gearbox checked and serviced before you commit. And if you find structural rust, walk away. It's the one fault that can cost you more than the car is worth. So there you have it. 6 used cars and the 6 faults that keep failing them. Lights, tyres, brakes, suspension, rust, and leaks and exhaust. The Commodore, the Navara, the Colorado, the Triton, the LDV T60 and the Volkswagen. None of these cars are evil. Looked after properly, any of them can be a good honest buy. But that's the catch, isn't it? The same 6 faults sink them again and again, and the real danger was never the metal. It's the buyer who doesn't know to check, because that's the bloke the seller gets to take for granted. A roadworthy certificate is a license of trust. Don't assume it, verify it, and inspect the thing before you pay. And if you've already got one of these in the driveway, sort the cheap fails now, before they snowball into a failed inspection at the worst possible moment. Now I want to hear from you. Which used car failed you at inspection, and what was it for? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. And if this saved you a costly mistake, hit like and subscribe. Drive safe and buy smarter.